Welcome. I'm Christine. If you're new to my work, I am a feeding therapist. I help parents of picky and fearful eaters go from stressed, stuck, fearful meal times that everybody hates to confident, excited, curious, calm foodies. We use a holistic approach that looks at the whole child across all four pillars of feeding. So we leave no stone unturned. And today I'm going to tell you a story about sort of how this came to be. Um, like every parent, I thought my child would never be a picky eater, right? But this was before I was really an expert in feeding, right? I had worked for a very long time as a speech pathologist, seen lots of different types of kids, um, even doing some feeding, right? So if you listen to last week's episode, that was before I really just did feeding like I do now. I had a variety of cases, things like that. But I had done tons of research. Food and quality food is very important to me and always has been. Nutrition and detox have been, I'd say, for over 10 years, you know, I don't want to say like a hobby, but I've enjoyed actually learning, watching documentaries, taking classes about these topics long before I was married or had a child. But when it was time to, I was pregnant, thinking about our future, and I was like, he is going to be a wonderful eater. He's going to love food just as much as I do. I'm going to cook him the best meals. We're just going to do breast milk. I'm going to be like all natural, no kid food, no kids menu, right? I have all of these ideas in my head, right? And I'm sure some of you probably felt the same way. You were like, yes, I'm going to do this. And this is going to be how it is. And they're not going to be picky with me, right? I'm going to set them up for success or whatever it is. All right. So my expectations pre-baby were breast milk only, real food only, no kid food, all organic, everything. I was pretty confident and I had a plan. I was going to do baby-led weaning. Okay. I had researched a lot. I watched a wonderful documentary about breast milk, and I was just sold on the whole, we're just going to be as natural as possible. Okay. Then cue the real life curveballs. When he was born, he really struggled. He had ties. He was very colicky, reflux, constipation. We really struggled, and I didn't know much about ties at all, actually, at that time. I don't even know if I had ever really I don't think I had learned anything about them whatsoever in school, in my career. It never really came across. So it was totally new to me, right? In all of the videos and the books that I read about breastfeeding, it was just this very natural thing that babies just knew how to do. And it was painful. He was on and off every 5 seconds, it seemed, crying. Seemed like he was never getting enough. And I've heard this from many of the parents that have come to us when their child is an infant. And we do help them through this really tricky infancy stage that doesn't have to be. Many people just, it's easy peasy. But for me, it was not. And I was really upset because I was trying so hard not to do formula, and pumping wasn't going great. His eating wasn't going great. Everyone wanted me to do formula, and I was just like putting my foot, like digging it into the sand, like, no, we are not going to do formula. I swore I wasn't going to do it. I'm just doing breast milk. I tried, and then I cut out dairy for the reflux. I didn't cut out soy, but I did cut out dairy. We did like gripe water and windy sticks, and I tried like every like natural thing. And eventually, like a few weeks into this struggle, I did find out he had ties. Um, I don't even remember how. I don't even know how I found out. Maybe I was just Googling. I honestly don't even know. Um, but it kind of like all clicked into place. But I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this. So I got a tie release like pretty much right away, but with no oral motor, no like real plan, no real understanding of what to do. So then I started to like piece things together. It was like DIY oral motor therapy with, I mean, luckily I have as an SLP, like I was able to take some courses and I'd have access to maybe some resources that maybe a typical mom wouldn't. So I just started diving in and learning and figuring it out. I did eventually get him some chiropractic help, some oral motor therapy, but it was still very like piecemeal. It wasn't really a cohesive plan. There wasn't really anything like I didn't really like I was doing what I saw in the videos to do. I was doing what I was being taught by the experts to do, but I wasn't totally understanding if I was doing it right. So there were some gaps obviously, but I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, yes, we jumped right on this and I fixed this problem. And, his latch got better and he did eat better. And we were able to get over the hump of the challenging infant feeding. And I was like, yay, we're done. We did it. Not realizing that we were not done with the feeding struggle. So, I continued to learn though, because at that point I became like very invested and I really, I don't know what drives anybody to have an interest in learning anything. I just, became fascinated with feeding. So I just kept taking courses along the way, the whole time. And, then we went from all of the infant courses to the baby courses and learning to eat. So we did baby-led weaning, which was for me very stressful. I don't know how many parents out there have done baby-led weaning, but there's a lot of gagging. There's a lot of trusting the natural processes and the reflexes to do their job. But you're like very tense, I find, because you're not supposed to intervene when they're gagging because you can cause them to choke. And you want to, like, it's your natural instinct to be like, oh no, something's wrong. Like, let me just jump in. So it was a lot of that, like that little like stress and anxiety that kind of, for me, went along with the baby led weaning. But we got past that and he was eating food and he was eating what we were eating. And he was eating vegetables and meats and fruits. And he seemed like the best little eater. So at that point, you think you've won. You've like, did it, made it to this point. We're good. No, just another curveball around the corner, right? So after he eats everything, you think you're winning, but then the slow shift happens and he starts dropping those foods. And they are what now I know to be the classic, like oral motor issue foods of, oh, he stopped eating meat. Oh, he stopped eating vegetables. And it was just like any food that was like a little bit more challenging, he just sort of gave up on. And we hear this all the time. We get lots of parents who say, but they were eating everything. I don't understand. Then all of a sudden they started to drop the foods. So what I did and what a lot of parents do is they start to creep in with the baby foods, the marketed foods, right? Like the pouches and the puffs and the meltables and the yogurt melts and the whatever. So all of a sudden I had all of these little, of course, like the most, I don't know, organic versions of those that I can find. They make you feel like, oh, this has bone broth in the puffs, so it's special. Like, it was still puffs. So, um, because I wanted variety. And so I was like, at that point, I was like, all right, it's a win because he ate this puff. But every time we'd have like a success on that end, I feel like more of the real foods would drop off. So I wasn't, this phase just kind of stretched on. And it was longer than typical. I wouldn't say it was like a food battle, but like I felt very defeated because I would make these beautiful meals and then, I'd present them and he wasn't interested. He wouldn't eat them anymore. And, that's just like, I was like, but that wasn't what I wanted. That wasn't the plan. Right. Um, Now at this point, he was also in speech therapy because he wasn't talking, which whole different topic of conversation. And it's unrelated to the feeding oral motor challenges to a pretty big extent. So that's a different topic. But since he was in feeding therapy, one of the feeding therapists did have some more oral motor experience. So I had her work with him on that. And they did make some progress with that, which helped some. But I will tell you that the real change started to happen when I started to make some changes and shifts in my approach and how I was approaching mealtime, how I was presenting, how I was talking about food, how I was including him in food, all of the things, my anxiety towards the meal times, all of that. When I started to shift it, he started to have some shifts. The more I learned about mindset, the more he opened up, the more he became a little less fearful, a little bit more curious, right? So I would say, never was like so in our program, we have like fearful, stuck, curious, and foodie. I'd say he never was at the fearful level, truly. But we were definitely in the stuck for a very long time. He started to move from stuck to curious. Now he is at foodie level. So we are super celebrating, but we've come so far and we've learned so much. But it all goes back to the mindset things that we've learned. I'm not saying that the other things weren't there, they weren't important. They all came with their own layer. Like there was a sensory layer, there was an oral motor layer. There was a bit of a gut layer, I'd say, and we did work on all of those things, which all helped. But a big shift was just how I approached things. And when he started to internalize what I was saying about like how I approach food and like, he was very much like, no, I don't eat that. And when his mindset started to shift and I started to hear him talk differently about food, I knew we were in a new phase and things were really rolling. And that momentum didn't stop once we were there. Whereas like right before, it was like I don't want to say he like regressed. It's like, like they drop off those foods and they get like their safe foods. Which I guess, you can say that is a regression because they were eating great before that. But yeah, so he was starting to shift how he thought about food. And that's when that snowball just started rolling. So yes, I was doing a lot behind the scenes. It was really a combined effort of making sure all of those ducks were in a row. But my attitude and shifts and emotional shifts and things like that really were a big turning point, I feel. And, reflecting back, would it have been faster if I knew what I know now? Yeah, I'm sure because I help parents move through this process much quicker. But again, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was piecing together things from different specialists. Like I took courses on sensory, I took courses on mindset. Courses on mindset that had mostly, I don't think there were any courses on mindset for feeding. There are people that touch on it for sure. Like Melanie Potok, she does like touch on this for sure. But I actually really learned a lot from different types of mindset teachers. And I thought that was really super helpful. So then I basically shifted it into how to apply it for feeding. So I guess it was just my journey to do that, right? Because now I'm able to help so many more people because there really wasn't anywhere for me to go. There wasn't one person that got all of these things right and knew how to direct me. So I was piecing everything together. So it took longer than it takes me to get a typical child who's in the stuck level to a foodie, right? So now we could do that much more easily because we have the tools, because we have the resources, because we know what to look for, we know the red flags, we know what to shift, and we know which order to do things in. But I didn't have that then. So I'm actually pregnant now with my second baby, and it is going to be a girl. So um, this is going to be very interesting because I now have the complete, or what I think at this point to be the complete picture of feeding. And I feel like the whole process is going to be completely like 180 degrees different. So I just want you to know that if you're if you were like me at all and you were feeling like a failure at any point in that feeding journey, be it when they were first starting, and maybe you went to formula because that was just like the easiest thing to do and it just made the most sense and it felt right to you at the time. I don't want you to feel like you're a failure. You didn't fail because they started to drop off their those foods and they were only left with a couple of safe foods. You're not. Okay? It's super complicated and there aren't a ton of resources out there. There's a lot of perceived resources, but most of them are not super helpful and they're not tailored to your specific needs. Um, because feeding is so complicated, like it's not like you could just, I don't know, like you can't just, fix it with like one picky eater course, if it's severe. If you have a typical 2.5-year-old that's just being a little defiant and a little bit more selective, then yeah, those courses are great. But if you have a kid who is literally afraid of food, gagging on food, spitting it out, like it's not your failing. Whoops. It's not your failing. It's feeding is complicated. The system generally is broken. So not everybody has the right knowledge and tools to help. Um, and there's often just so much more to that story. It's not usually just picky eating. Um, so you're not behind. You just don't have all of the right tools in one place, at least until now, right? Because I did create a way for that to happen because I don't know, I guess that's just what my journey is, right? In this lifetime, like what I'm meant to be doing. Because for me, that was interesting. For me, that was fun. For me, I just enjoy learning about that, where someone else might think the whole thing is super boring. And they much rather focus on something else. But this is my passion and my niche. And I think it's because of all of the struggles that we had. Obviously, right? I didn't know anything before that. I don't think I would have been led down this path, uh, you know, without him having these issues. So in many ways, it was a blessing for so many people because now we've been able to help and support so many from the struggles of this one child. And I'm so happy to report that he does love food now. I'm not going to say he absolutely eats everything, but he is what I would consider from our program a foodie. He definitely has more than 40 foods. He will definitely try foods independently now without being coerced. He enjoys cooking foods. Um, so there absolutely is hope. Um, you know, the holistic approach is really the approach of the future. Putting all the pieces together. We try not to compartmentalize. You can't compartmentalize the body. The medical system has, but it doesn't work well because the pieces of the body are all interconnected and you can't just say, well, that's a gut problem, but it's not a feeding problem. That's not a thing. Of course, those two things are related. You cannot separate them at all. So if there is a gut problem, there is a feeding problem. If they are not going to the bathroom for 3 days, that is going to affect their eating. It just does. It just does, in some way, especially with kids, more so than adults who have more awareness of their body, more, their brains are more developed. They could think logically about things. They might be less fearful. They have greater life experience, where kids that don't easily drop into fear. But it all comes together. And that's just what we're super passionate about. So if this is resonating with you, definitely check out all of our resources. Our Unlocking Meal Times roadmap is how we uncover what the issues are. And then our membership, where we do one-to-one parent coaching, or if you're local, we do in person as well. But our course comes with it. You have to learn what to do. I tried to take all of the information from all of the different courses and all of the teachings in my head and create small snippets of information so that parents, anyone could learn to do it, because it's not about me being a person that makes them eat. It's about you being a person that makes them eat. And I don't want to say makes, that teaches them about that food is enjoyable and fun. And if it's not right now, it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just some circumstances. But again, my journey ended up being very positive. And I'd love for you to look at your journey with your child and food in the same way, in that positive light of, what can I learn from this? How can this, maybe there's something that on the other side of this, we are going to be closer, stronger, healthier. There's some reason that you're struggling with this, just like there was a reason that we struggled with it. The reasons may end up being different. You're probably not going to end up being a feeding therapist like I was, but there still is like that, going to be that silver lining. So the more you look for that, the easier this journey will be. And it is a journey. It's definitely not a quick fix. And the next video next week is actually just about that. A parent who wasn't ready, which is a case that I always think about, that sort of broke my heart, because that's what they were looking for, a quick fix. And this feeding journey, especially with the severe cases, is anything but a quick fix. It's a lot of small changes that will add up to big changes, but it's not going to be an overnight quick fix. So stay tuned for that next week. It's a really good story that you can learn a lot of lessons from, even if it's not a severe case for you. Still a lot of ahas, I hope. And be sure to check out our website. You can go to thepickyEatersTest.com if you haven't already, to see what type of an eater you have and to learn the next steps in your child's feeding journey. So we will see you next week. Have a great week, guys.
Thank you for listening to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater. To learn more about achieving your child's feeding goals, check out Christine's website at foodologyfeeding.com. And be sure to tune in next time to How to Unpicky Your Picky Eater.